I think we can all agree, even though the majority of us don't particularly like it very much, that microtransactions and loot boxes are going to be a staple moving forward in our AAA games. But one of the things I always wondered about was how much money people actually spent on these microtransactions. Well, an interview with an ex-Bioware Montreal developer sheds some light on that. He goes on to talk about the insane amounts of money that people were spending on Mass Effect multiplayer cards, and let me tell you, it is insane. And then he details how basically, because of that, EA kind of forced all that into other games of their own. What is going on, guys? Randall Thor 19, the man with the million, back again with another video. And yes, a lot of videos dropping today on the channel. If you missed any of them, I'll just run them down really briefly, or you can check them out. We had the Gears of War 4 news that it's getting Xbox One X enhanced with the visual mode, true 4K, and a performance mode, which runs at 60 frames and 1080p for the campaign. Cool stuff there. We also had the Xbox backwards compatibility announcements. Starting tomorrow, OG Xbox games, there'll be 13 of them launching, and they're getting improvements, 1080p, smoother frame rate. And then also, certain 360 games are getting updated for the Xbox One X. Halo 3, Assassin's Creed, Fallout, all of them are going to have 9 times the pixel count in HDR. So, really good improvements. Check those videos out when you got the time. But honestly, when I saw this interview, I just had to make a video about it because it's ridiculous. It's really insane how much money people spend on microtransactions and loot boxes. And I'm going to get into the figure here in a minute, but I kind of want to set up the whole story here. So, gameplay designer Manveer Heir went on the Waypoint podcast. He's an ex-Bioware Montreal developer who worked at Electronic Arts, and he worked mostly on the Mass Effect 3 multiplayer, and he also worked on Mass Effect Andromeda. Now, this is all kind of started with, Patrick Sutherland canceling that Star Wars game, and, well, not canceling it, moving it to a different studio, but shutting down Visceral. And if you remember his quote, he said, "It has become clear that to deliver an experience that players will want to come back to and enjoy for a long time, we need to pivot the design. We are shifting the game to be a broader experience that allows for more variety and player agency." Now, a lot of us took that to mean EA is shifting away from the single-player experience that a lot of people enjoy in favor of the Destiny model of open-world games or shared open-world games. And this is what Manveer Heir, sorry if I say his name wrong, said he saw happen firsthand at EA and saw the greed that EA had for these microtransactions firsthand. He goes on to say, "It's definitely a thing inside of EA. They are generally pushing for more open world games, and the reason is you can monetize them better. The words in there that were used are have them come back again and again. Why do you care about that, EA? The reason you care about that is because microtransactions. Buying card packs in Mass Effect games, the multiplayer. It's the same reason we added card packs to Mass Effect 3. How do you get people to keep coming back to a thing instead of just playing for 60 to 100 hours? And that is an interesting question a lot of developers and publishers have answered, because we've shifted away from that singular 5 to 10 hour, 10 to 20 hour single player experience, and now people want infinite amount of hours to enjoy their games in. They want to be able to play Overwatch for 500 to 600 hours and have new content drop all the time. And they want to do the same with Rainbow Six Siege 2 and Destiny 2. And those games make money, even though despite Destiny 2 is losing a lot of users because there's nothing to do. Other developers and other publishers see that this model is making their constituents and their friends a whole truckload of money. So they want to get in on that. So the question has to, they ask themselves is, how do we get them to play for an infinite amount of time instead of only for a set amount of time? And he goes on to say, the problem is that we've scaled up our budgets to $100 million. $100 million, man, that really seems like a lot of money for a video game. $100 million. And we haven't actually made a space for good linear single-player games that are under that. But why can't we have both? Why does it have to be one or the other? And the reason is that EA and those big publishers in general only care about the highest return on investment. And this next quote is pretty damning about how a lot of these publishers view us gamers, right? He goes on to say, they don't actually care about what the players want. They care about what the players will pay for. And I know there's a lot of controversy lately with microtransactions and loot boxes, the Shadow of War stuff, the Forza 7 stuff, the Overwatch stuff. There's a divide, like what is okay for loot boxes and what is okay for microtransactions. And this guy is basically saying they don't care. The publishers don't care what you want as a gamer. They only care about what you are willing to pay for. We are just dollar signs to a lot of these companies. They don't have our best interests at heart. Just remember, at the end of the day, and this goes for Microsoft, Sony, Nintendo, EA, all we are to them is a piggy bank. A piggy bank that they can take, turn over, and dump out whenever they see fit and take money from us. And that is the God's honest truth. You just always got to remember that. We are just a checkbook or cash for these developers. Now I'm going to get in here to how insane some of these transactions you saw in Mass Effect in just a second. But he goes on to say, you need to understand the amount of money that's at play with microtransactions. I'm not allowed to say the number, but I can tell you that when Mass Effect 3 multiplayer came out, those card packs were selling, and the amount of money we made just off those card packs was so significant. That's the reason Dragon Age has multiplayer. That's the reason other EA products started getting multiplayer that hadn't really had them before, because we nailed it and brought in a ton of money. It's repeatable income versus one-time income. And that is why everybody does it, folks. That last sentence right there. It's repeatable income versus one-time income. Sure, you can go buy Overwatch and spend $60, but that's it. The developer is getting nothing more from you, right? But if you put in those loot boxes, if you put in those microtransactions, the income doesn't have to stop. It can keep on coming as long as you're putting things in there that people want to buy. And he mentions how, because of Mass Effect multiplayer and how much money they were making, EA put multiplayer in Dragon Age. EA put multiplayer in other games that didn't have before. Because that is what they're looking for, the highest return on investment. They don't care about what we want. They only care about what we'll pay for. But here is the bombshell. He goes on to say, I've seen people literally spend $15,000 on Mass Effect's multiplayer cards. Let me say that again. I've seen people literally spend $15,000 on Mass Effect multiplayer cards. And that right there, folks, is your answer on why loot boxes and microtransactions are never going away. Even though people will buy Shadow of Mordor, and never spend a dime as kind of maybe a boycott or protest against loot boxes, there's always somebody out there who has a lot of money and doesn't have a lot of sense, or a lot of money who doesn't have a lot of time. I mean, think about that. $15,000 on Mass Effect cards, or $15,000 on Overwatch loot boxes, or $15,000 on Shadow of War loot crates. That is what all these publishers are after. Those whales. And those whales are basically a term used to describe, the gamers on the mobile scene. The ones who basically fund that free-to-play mentality so other players can enjoy it. But it's always with the hope that if you try the game out for free, you will spend the money at some point. Maybe not on the scale of $15,000 like these people, but maybe you throw them 20, maybe you throw them 60. And it's not going to change. Even if we all boycott it, the casual market they don't care. They like these in their games. They've been conditioned to have these in their games. You know, it starts young with mobile games, so kids grow up thinking that this is okay, and they expect these type of things in their games. And then they outgrow the mobile games. They get into proper is maybe a dirty word against mobile, but video games from Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo, and they expect those things because they've been conditioned to believe that is part of the video game experience. But $15,000, that is a lot of money. Now he goes on to talk about Anthem, and he says, "You've seen what new Bioware franchise is coming out, right?" And the answer is, of course, Anthem. He goes, "Right. It's not a traditional looking Bioware game, right?" And it's not. It's definitely not. If that's what you're seeing from a place like Bioware, owned by EA, a place where I worked for 7 years, if that's what you're seeing from Visceral, now closing and going to this other Vancouver studio, what it means is that the linear single-player AAA game at EA is dead for the time being. I mean, for the time being, of course, is the key word. You know, it's like he said before, all these publishers are chasing these whales. They're chasing the idea of repeatable income versus one-time income. And all they care about is what players will pay for. They don't care about what we want. And you just have to remember that. But guys, $15,000 is a lot of money for digital goods. Digital goods, consumable that are gone. My mind just can't even really fathom somebody spending that amount of money. Like, I can fathom someone spending $100, but $15,000. I mean, I hope that dude is rich, because if he's not, man, you have some serious problems. You probably need to go to a psychologist or something and work out, because that is ridiculous. And those are the type of people, because of this, because they spend the most amount of money, is why all that stuff is in our games. Anyways, guys, I thought this story was really interesting to share with everybody, which is why I made the video. So, if you did like it, make sure you hit that like button. Check out Waypoint's interview with this dude from Bioware to get the full breakdown. He even talks about like what Mass Effect Andromeda was before all that stuff, but that's for a different conversation. So if you enjoyed it, please hit that like button. Consider subscribing for more content. Check out all the past videos that I mentioned earlier. Hit the notification bell so you're always notified when I drop new videos. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. Hope everybody has a good rest of the night, and I will see everybody tomorrow. Later, guys.